Kate Mille Fáilte, which means in Gaelic 100,000 welcomes.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
History is a nightmare from which one must awaken.
Hello again, everyone, and you're very welcome to Deep Diving with myself, Malachy Murray. Well, this is indeed a very strange St. Patrick's Day once again. Instead of being delighted and drunk, you're probably somber and sober looking at this video. But fear not, for today I bring back a man, a little friend of mine, who's going to deep dive into the life of St. Patrick. And that man is all the way in the west of Ireland, and his name is Mr. Balor O'Brien, everyone. Balor, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Malachy. How are you?
Good, good, good. I can see that you are alive with the spirit of spring in the face paint today, the green, the blue. What does that represent for you, sir?
Well, at this time of year, I suppose we all have to show our colors, and for me, green is always going to be part of Ireland and associated with Ireland, and of course the blue, because the blue actually predates the green as the color associated with St. Patrick and Ireland.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The blue, of course, representing the sea, and the green representing the land, and the marriage on your face is quite powerful, of the water and the dirt mixing together and sending out this powerful message to everyone that's looking now. And if we could just reflect on your face for a moment, I think that would be something very special for us all to do, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Balor, you are a man that courts controversy with your opinions on various matters, and that is certainly the case with what you said about St. Patrick last week. We have been inundated with comments about you that aren't very flattering, to say the least. If I could read a few out to you.
Please, I would love to hear them.
At Celtic for Life, that's with a number 4 in the middle, or it could be Celtic for Life, says, here we go. Is this masked muppet an ultra expletive woke lefty spouting expletive, and there's a poo emoji there. I'd love to expletive, I have to take out the swear words. I'd love to expletive, cut his expletives off and hang them from the highest expletive tree in the expletive land. Not much really you can say about that, is there?
Well, it sounds like he's done his fair share of rituals in the past.
Again, doesn't specify whether it's a man or a woman, so we can only surmise. Celtic for Life, who knows? This seems to be a man. At Kean7438295 writes, expletive the hell off, you expletive, another poo emoji hawk.
He sounds like a man of few words.
At Shirley Freemason writes, a very interesting question here. Who would, in Balor's opinion, win in a scrap between St. Patrick and Robin Hood? Very interesting question.
There's no doubt St. Patrick would get the better of Robin Hood every time.
Is that because of his magic staff?
Yes, I mean, it's his magic staff, it's his influence. He surely wouldn't fight directly with Robin Hood, because it would be game over for him. And St. Patrick never fights like a fair fight, so you could expect him to have some underhand tactics.
Absolutely.
To win out.
And of course, the merry band of men would be completely out of this fight. It would have to be a one-on-one in the interest of fairness. At Donal Cubcorn, I believe it is, asks, what part of Mayo did St. Patrick reside as a slave, and was he an extra in the Quiet Man film?
Well,
I think there's
he's
a difference in the timeline there. I think Donald, the Quiet Man was shot in 1951, whereas St. Patrick was long dead at that stage.
yes.
It's self-explanatory, really. But what part of Mayo do you think he was? Was it in and around Croagh-Patrick?
So it wasn't around Croagh-Patrick. He visited Croagh-Patrick for Lent, and he fasted up there for 40 days, many years, not just once. He did it several times, and there are stories that he banished many snakes that were residing around the mountain. But it isn't there's an ancient wood which is on the border with Sligo, which was believed to be called Fucklet Woods. That is the forest that he was supposedly it is the place that is most commonly, I suppose, accepted that was the location, because when he fled as a slave, he said that he traveled approximately 200 miles to a coastal port, a port where he was able to get passage across the sea. So calculating roughly, I suppose, 200 kilometers, they reckon that it kind of lines up with other stories about St. Patrick.
Yeah, so they've done their lines to find out exactly where. They've done the math.
Yeah, the miles, I think the measurements were different as well, but they've factored in all of those things.
A ruler is a ruler is a ruler. Final question for now actually comes from myself. I wrote it at Malachy Murray. What's so awful about the patriarchy? Last week you were talking all about St. Patrick bringing the patriarchy into Ireland. I mean, didn't men do a lot of good things too? It's not all bad, you know. We did build the roads, the schools, the tin openers to open the cans. I mean, you know, what's so bad about a tin opener?
Well, it depends what you use the tin opener for.
Well, of course, if I used it as a weapon, I would be deemed a patriarchal pig. But if I used it to open a can of beans for my other half, surely I'd be seen as a benevolent gentleman.
The patriarchy, it isn't so much about the impact on. It's really about. It's what it really is at the root is that in pagan society, women and men were equals, and the opportunities afforded to both genders were equal, and that shifted over time. As the church grew in influence, they were able to diminish many pagan practices, and they misappropriated the I suppose the local leaders and the people who made such an impact on their societies and communities by declaring them saints, even though they were never Christian, and there's no evidence that they were ever Christian. And ultimately, the patriarchal emphasis came into play in the 12th century and going on from there. And I mean, all you have to do is look at historical sources to see how many, I suppose, trials and tribulations women had to go through to gain equality once more.
Yes. But then again, tin openers. So, Bala, to continue on with your historical analysis of the real St. Patrick, what have you got for us this day of days that celebrates the patron saint?
Yeah, so I felt it would be appropriate to further explain the motives behind St. Patrick. And at the moment, I can't declare which fairy or there was a creature from the other world that had influence over St. Patrick. That much is clear and absolutely. So
Now,
this creature.
are we talking a benevolent or malevolent creature? Are we talking a nice fairy, or are we talking
We'll be classifying him as malevolent.
malevolent demon? Was he demon possessed, do you think, or was it more fairy demon possessed? I'm not too sure.
So this creature has been described as it actually only ever spoke to St. Patrick. He didn't ever see it. And what kind of a creature, I suppose, what kind of benevolent creature doesn't show you its face? So the creature was called, well, it called itself Victoricus, and what is believed to have happened is that it convinced St. Patrick to return to Ireland. Now, it appears that he was sent originally to complete St. Columbus's work, because it was St. Columbus who began the process of eliminating snakes in Ireland. And of course, we already know that there was no such thing as snakes in Ireland, because from the last ice age, the snakes didn't reach Ireland in the before the ice caps melted and Ireland separated from the rest of Europe. So that type of animal, it never reached Ireland. So when they're talking about snakes, of course, they're talking about the Druids who were turned into snakes using this dark magic.
Oh, so the Druids represent the demons, where you're arguing that the Druids were closer to our own nature in terms of dealing with nature, our own true spirituality. And Christianity came and rid Ireland of those people. Is that what you are suggesting, sir?
Yeah, the pagan beliefs were that snakes were sacred. So the Druids in society, they held snakes as one of the sacred creatures, and as a kind of a cruel irony, or to show cruel sense of humor, this spirit, this Victoricus, he granted powers to some saints, such as St. Columbus originally, but because he wasn't able to complete his task, St. Patrick and several others were imbued with these powers through their staffs and through other means. And they used this to transform many Druids who opposed their spreading of the Christian faith, and turned them into snakes. And from there, they were trapped, they were killed quite gruesomely.
My goodness, my goodness. Were they turned into snakes as we know them today, or were they turned into man snakes, like snakes the size of men with maybe they had arms and legs, but just looked a bit more snaky?
It actually depends, because the saints didn't have great control over their magic, because they weren't properly trained. They were only used as a means to an end. So the only objective was to transform. So some of these Druids were turned into great terrible beasts. Others were turned into small ordinary snakes that were easily killed. Obviously, they preferred to turn them into small, easy to kill animals, but again, they weren't very aware of, I suppose, the complexities of the magic they were wielding. And on a couple of occasions, it benefited them in terms of winning over the local support by turning the Druid into some sort of larger monster. And of course, you have to also factor in some of the Druids all had varying degrees of power. Some were normal people, some had the blood of Balor running through their veins, and as such, they were able to do different things. So in some cases, they were able to retain some of their memories and powers, and they were able to fight back, which led to some of these battles that were recorded about St. Patrick versus various serpents in Ireland.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. Do you believe at the time there was a lot of people taking magic mushrooms?
Well, various fungi were common to consume for
not the
for
dolphin
people in Ireland, going back thousands of years.
Not the dolphin. Sorry, you said fungi, and I made a joke about the dolphin, the now missing dolphin. Sorry, continue. It's just when I see humor, I jump at it with both hands.
Evidently. I suppose, yeah, I mean, I've only had limited experience myself with magic mushrooms. It totally depends. There's different ones, so, and every person will have a different reaction, and every creature, every fairy will have a different reaction. So maybe that's when the creatures are appearing to us, because the fairies are also enjoying the magic mushrooms and they're forgetting to conceal themselves in the mists of Mananon.
Explain, what are the mists of Mananon? What is that?
So the mists of Mananon would be the concealing spell that Mananon MacLear uses. The best description of him is he is the Irish pagan god of the sea, but he would be an amalgamation, I suppose, of Poseidon and Hades. And he uses mists to disguise and hide the other world from human eyes. He can also use it to reveal it, or he can use it if you're walking through a mist in the early hours of the morning. You might find yourself losing your direction, and you may have actually stumbled onto the lands of the fairy folk.
When's the last time you stumbled onto the lands of the fairy folk, Balor O'Brien?
I try and get there every morning. I'm up at the crack of dawn and I'm searching for the nearest mist and fog to see. But unfortunately, yesterday I had a feeling I was visiting a new part of the other world that I hadn't been before, because I'd followed the owl who lives nearby. He had swooped into the mists, and I suppose I was a little bit excited, and I followed him hastily, and suddenly there was this extraordinary bang, and I actually I realized that it was just a car had a particularly I suppose anti-environment vehicle that was projecting the fumes, which I mistook for the mists of Mananon.
Yes, well, it's probably a little unfair to call it an anti-environment car. The car is just being the car. The car is doing what the car was designed to do. So I don't think the car has an opinion on the environment. It's just doing. So in fairness to cars, they're not the ones to blame here. But we're digressing a lot here, and I need to get back to St. Patrick. Does St. Patrick currently reside in the other world, and is his essence more alive today, his day, than it is for the rest of the year?
There are different stories about where St. Patrick is now. Some people say that he is, I suppose the most common belief is that his body is resting in Downpatrick. Some people say Croagh-Patrick, and there are dozens of other locations. But as of yet, we have not located him.
That's his physical skeleton, I presume you're talking about. What I'm talking about is his essence. Can you feel his essence today? Does that pass through the mist on occasion? Does St. Patrick come through, especially after a few tins of Guinness? Does St. Patrick come through and speak to the Irish people directly? Is this a day where people at home should really connect with the man, the essence, the spirit that is St. Patrick, and communicate with him on a deeper level?
It's a fair point to talk about the spirit and what St. Patrick means to people, because obviously St. Patrick's Day has become this worldwide phenomenon, and across the world people want to celebrate him. Obviously, when we started our petition to raise more awareness and to get back to more the roots of Irish culture, we met an awful lot of resistance. And the reason for that resistance is this affinity people have to St. Patrick, and this love, this very, very intense love and affection that people have for St. Patrick and the holiday that he represents and the activities that might be represented on the day. But so while we might know the truth, Malachy, and the world might remain ignorant or blind to St. Patrick's true actions in Ireland, what it represents or what it signifies can't be ignored, and what it does for the people of Ireland on that day.
Would you go as far to say, especially with this angry response you've received for merely raising the question of St. Patrick, good man, you've done it yourself. I didn't want to say it to you, but it looks a lot better when you have your hood up. Well done, sir. But yes, when the people of Ireland react so violently and angry, when you question the very nature of St. Patrick, do you believe collectively the Irish people have daddy issues?
It certainly feels like some people need to get out more and maybe take some time for themselves to reflect on what St. Patrick means to them and what kind of thoughts they're having, because some of the messages that I've received privately have been, I suppose, they would be classed as very disturbing. Okay. Even I would class them as very disturbing.
My God, they must be pretty horrific if you're classing them as disturbing. Wow. Do any of those messages you received involve pictures? Is there any nudity involved?
I prefer not to. I suppose I received some very images I never would have expected to see, short of a pagan ritual, maybe, or some sort of.
Of course, and of course, we won't be sharing them on the show today, but maybe later you might forward on a few just for dexterity in terms of my investigation into your world, sir. Are there any other outstanding stories of St. Patrick before we get to the juicy bits on your Bala's private eye?
Well, I suppose the last story of St. Patrick encountering a snake.
Whilst you're telling that, I'm just going to do my usual, and especially on a day like this, I'm going to get a pint of the black stuff. I'll be back. You just tell them this story, and we'll get into the juicy stuff of Bala's private eye. All right, sir? Thank you.
Yeah. I'll go ahead anyway. So, what I was going to say was that in Muskerry Lake in the Galtee Mountains, that is believed to be the last place that St. Patrick encountered a serpent. And essentially, what happened was this was a druid who had been transformed. Now, the druid was very wise and very powerful. Even in his serpent form, he was, I suppose, a very formidable adversary for St. Patrick. And in order to overcome him, St. Patrick had to contain him inside the lake, so beneath the surface of the lake. And in order to do so, he had to trick the serpent, and essentially promised to release him on Easter Monday. And he did not specify which Easter Monday, so he has been able to, well, since that time, he successfully contained the druid in the form of a snake beneath the lake. But every Easter Monday at midnight, this snake escapes and he screams out, calling that his day is long overdue and he expects to escape. And at this point, all these centuries later, this serpent may no longer be the honorable Druid that he was believed to have been all those years ago. And the fear now is that unbeknownst to some visitor, they may unintentionally release him, and we would be, I suppose, the outcome of that would be completely unpredictable.
Sweet sound of success, sir. Now, what I like to do is I like to freeze my glass when I am pouring a little bit of genius. And I have a very cold can here. Now, Balor, I don't know what you do, but I tend to just go straight for it, turn it upside down. And a friend told me a trick that with the widget, this is the best way to do it. Completely upside down, no tilting the glass. You just let it pour all the way out. Put it off to the side, and we wait. Are you done with that story?
Yeah, we can move on if you like.
Great. Now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for Balor's Private Eye. Wonderful. So, the local gossip down in the west of Ireland, in the little place you call, where are you again? You're based in Ennis, of course, in County. It gets so confusing.
County Clare.
Yes, once you get past Kildare, I find you just lose track with where you are. So tell us more about the local gossip, the local secret society, and all the mad stuff that's going on down there.
Well, there were several days, and since we last spoke, I was several days looking for more.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone! Cheers.
I was looking for more stories or more clues to what's going on in Ennis, and following various people around the town, it's been very frustrating. There hadn't been anything for several days, and then I don't know if you recall Ben, the gentleman who discovered the asylum. I came across him walking through town one day, and he I suppose he was with a friend, and just for curiosity's sake, I followed him, and he walked into the Church of Ireland grounds in the centre of Ennis, and there is, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with it, but there is a small stone pyramid located on the grounds, and they huddled in on one side of it, and in order not to draw attention, I continued past the gate, and I came around.
Balor, sorry. Can I interrupt you for one? You see that under your left eye there? Is that a pint of Guinness? It just, when you look at your mask there, it looks like. See is that meant to be a pint of Guinness? It looks very familiar.
It was supposed to be a barcode for a pint of Guinness to scan.
Very good, sir.
But we didn't have a tin enough paintbrush.
Lovely. Well, you know, these are the hidden messages that you are constantly trying to get across into people's subconscious, and it's only now, and I've known you for so long, and I've just realized that that's what it is now. So please, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to express that. And back to your story.
So I came around the back, and I was able to hide on one side of the pyramid and overhear their conversation. And what Ben was talking about was when he was going back into town a few days earlier, he passed by a man wearing a mask inside the grounds of this, not a graveyard, but a little area that was kind of, is used to commemorate a couple of nuns and a priest who died about 150 years ago. So it's a little monument to commemorate them. And he seemed to think that this man looked very familiar, or there was something about him that was very suspicious to Ben, because Ben, as he was telling his friend Severus, he was telling him that this man it looked like he was praying. And this is a little garden or little space that he would pass almost every week on his way into Ennis over the years. And he just found it very strange to see this person praying here, because normally you would have had teenagers smoking and drinking, or depending on how late it was, doing other things on the monument. So to see someone praying on it, he found that to be a bit unusual. And he noticed that he was using weird hand signals. Now, I had to stay hidden behind the pyramid, but he did show Severus these hand signals, and unfortunately, I can't replicate them for you now. But I will look to see if I find anyone using unusual hand gestures in Ennis, so that I can share them with you in the future.
Okay, so who is Severus?
Severus is this friend of Ben who he decided to divulge some more information to. All I can give you is a description of Severus. He was very tall and very pale, and he had long jet black hair slicked back, and he had very, very dark, heavy set eyebrows, and piercing eyes that thankfully remained focused on Ben.
You believe
At least I presume they were, while he was telling the story.
You believe that they were focused on Ben, and were you fearful if they were focused on you, you would have somehow spontaneously
combusted? I was behind
the
pyramid, so
if he had seen you
behind the pyramid, so
what I mean is, if he had actually seen you, do you believe that he could have killed you with his stare?
I wouldn't like to test the theory.
That's a fair enough point. A fair enough point. Amazing. A man next to a pyramid doing hand gestures. I mean, how crazy can one get?
Watched by another man.
Watched by another man, and another man spying on the man. It's a fascinating area you live in, Balor. And it's one that really should be investigated further. I do hope you will be out and about in the field throughout the next week and bring us more stories about these strange people in this strange town you call Ennis.
Well, there's a little bit more if you care to hear it.
Oh, that's not all.
No, there was even more than the hand gestures.
Wow. Please continue.
So there isn't much more, I'm afraid, but there is a little bit more. So Ben took some time to do the hand gestures. I think he must have wanted to make sure Severus understood what he was referring to. So he took several long minutes, I would say, and I found myself kind of starting to drift off a little, because you can't hear you can't hear much that you want to with hand gestures behind the pyramid. So thankfully, anyway, he eventually resumed the story, and he seemed to think that this man noticed him staring at him in this little garden, or this little courtyard. And once the man realized he was being watched, he ran off. He ran and jumped the wall and disappeared into a floodplain behind the kind of between the housing estates. And as he leapt the wall, he dropped a bottle, and Ben kind of cautiously approached the bottle, or he kind of approached, he was a little bit cagey about this. So he approached the bottle, and he checked it with a stick first, just to see see if there was anything inside that he didn't want to be touching. And he noticed that it looked like there was something like it looked like almost like blood on the bottle. So he wondered if the man cut himself, and then he went over. He went over to the I suppose to the grave site, for lack of a better word, or to the commemorative statue to have a look there. And what he noticed was more blood, like droplets and flecks of blood, and he thought this was very, very strange. And he, I suppose, was wondering why was this man bleeding? Was it some sort of a ritual like what he'd seen in the asylum? And the garden space, it's untouched. Now Severus seems to be a bit of a local historian, because at this point he kind of he seemed familiar with the area of Ennis that he was talking about. And he mentioned that there had been rumors about there had been a convent there many years ago, and while it was in place and operated for about 30 years. And during that time, 2 nuns and a priest died quite suddenly, and there wasn't an awful lot of information about what happened to them. But he did seem to think that there had been tales about some strange behavior and strange activities going on at this convent. And very, very suddenly it was abandoned. And then several decades later, there was some talk of someone reopening it or restoring the building. And it was quite quickly destroyed after that. But he didn't seem to know who destroyed it or why they would take down something with such historical importance.
Unbelievable.
And that's at that point then the 2 gentlemen, they actually decided to I suppose take their conversation in a different direction, and they actually walked away from the pyramid, back out of the iron gates to the church grounds, and back up the town. So I don't have any more information, I'm afraid, yet from them, because a couple of times I got a bit close and my cover was nearly blown, and I have had to lie low for the last few days.
Mm. Amazing stuff, Balor. Your investigative work knows no bounds. I mean, that guy McIntyre, who used to be on the BBC, could learn a thing or two about getting in behind the scenes and learning more about the dangerous people in the vicinity. Bravo, sir, and I raise a glass to you. And I also raise a glass to St. Patrick. Be he malevolent, be he benevolent, whoever you are, St. Patrick, you left your mark. And I say, chin chins are. That's all for this week on Deep Diving with Malachy Murray. And thank you, Balor O'Brien, for your private eye work and your mythical and psyche knowledge about the Irish people and the myths, the legends, the folklore. We shall return, ladies and gentlemen, so get ready to deep dive.